At the company gala, my wife's boss put his hand on her lower back. She didn't move away, so I walked over, smiled, and whispered in his ear, "Your wife is watching from table 7. Your investors are at table 3. Choose your next move carefully." The ballroom at the Meridian Hotel sparkled with corporate ambition and champagne bubbles. 200 of our city's finest business minds mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, their conversations a symphony of stock options and quarterly projections. I stood at the bar, nursing my second bourbon, watching my wife Tessa navigate the crowd like she owned the place, which, in many ways, she did. Tessa Harlow commanded attention wherever she went. Tonight, in her midnight blue dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent, she was magnetic. Department heads gravitated toward her. Junior executives hung on her every word. The CFO's wife complimented her jewelry. But it was Marcus Ventor's hand that caught my attention. His palm settled on the small of her back as they stood near the dessert table. Fingers curved, possessive, the kind of touch that lingered a heartbeat too long, conveyed too much familiarity. Tessa didn't flinch, didn't step away. Instead, she leaned into it, tilting her head to catch whatever wisdom Marcus was sharing about market volatility. I counted to 10, took another sip of bourbon, set the glass down with deliberate care. Marcus Ventor, Senior Vice President of Operations, Tessa's direct supervisor for the past 2 years, married to Elena Ventor, who sat at table 7 wearing pearls and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Father of 2 kids whose soccer games he attended religiously, according to his LinkedIn posts. And now, apparently, the man whose hand knew exactly how my wife's spine curved beneath expensive fabric. I walked over. "Marcus," I said, positioning myself so close that my breath touched his ear. "Enjoying the evening?" His hand stayed put, bold. "Cole, good to see you. Just congratulating Tessa on her exceptional quarterly performance." "I'm sure." I leaned closer, my voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Your wife is watching from table 7. Your investors are at table 3. Choose your next move carefully." Marcus's hand dropped like he'd touched a live wire. I straightened, offering him my most pleasant smile. "Wonderful party. Tessa, shall we check out the silent auction?" My wife's green eyes flashed with something between annoyance and warning. "Of course, darling." As we walked away, I caught Elena Ventor's gaze across the room. She raised her champagne glass in the slightest acknowledgement. She'd seen everything. Had been seeing things for months, I suspected. Table 3 held the Meridian Group, 3 men and 1 woman, all wearing the kind of understated wealth that came from generational money and conservative investment strategies. They'd flown in from Salt Lake City specifically for tonight's presentation. 40% stakeholders in Marcus's division. Their portfolio mandate included strict family values clauses. They noticed everything. "What was that about?" Tessa asked as we paused before a framed photograph of the city skyline. "Just making conversation." I studied the auction sheet. "Lovely shot. Reminds me of the view from Marcus's corner office." Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You're being strange tonight." "Am I? Must be the bourbon." I glanced back toward Marcus, who was now deep in animated conversation with the head of accounting, his face slightly flushed. "Tell me, how long has Marcus been so hands-on with his management style?" Tessa's laugh came out forced. "Don't be ridiculous, Cole. He's my supervisor. We work closely together." "Closely, right." I nodded toward Elena's table. "Does his wife know how closely?" "You're imagining things." But I wasn't imagining the phone I'd cloned in February. 12 minutes was all it took while Tessa showered after her morning run. Simple process for someone with my IT background. The deleted messages weren't actually deleted from the cloud backup. 18 months of messages. Not the 6 months I'd originally suspected when Tessa started working late every Tuesday. Not even the year I'd calculated when she began mentioning Marcus's name with increasing frequency. 18 months of careful coordination, meeting times, hotel preferences, discussions about my schedule, my business trips, my predictable routines. The affair predated her promotion, preceded her raise, started before she landed the corner office with the city view that Marcus had personally approved. Cole? Tessa's voice pulled me back to the present. You're staring. Sorry, just thinking about work. I wasn't lying. I was thinking about work. Specifically, the $340,000 in bonuses Marcus had approved for Tessa's department over the past year, her team of 3 people. The money that had mysteriously filtered back through a consulting company owned by Tessa's brother Jake. Jake, who'd never consulted on anything more complex than which beer to order at Buffalo Wild Wings. My college roommate Danny worked SEC enforcement now. The anonymous complaint I'd filed last week was detailed, documented, and devastating. The investigation would open Monday morning. Marcus didn't know yet. Neither did Tessa. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus's voice boomed from the podium, if I could have your attention for just a moment. The crowd turned toward the front of the ballroom. Marcus stood beneath the spotlight, confident and commanding in his tailored tuxedo. The kind of man who'd never doubted his place in the world, never questioned whether he deserved what he took. Tonight, we celebrate not just our quarterly achievements, but the exceptional individuals who make our success possible. I watched Elena at table 7. She hadn't looked at her husband once since he'd started speaking. Instead, her attention focused on her phone, fingers moving across the screen with purpose. Our operations division exceeded projections by 18% this quarter, thanks in large part to innovative strategies and dedicated leadership. The Meridian Group nodded approvingly. Conservative investors loved predictable growth and stable leadership. They especially loved companies that reflected their values, family values, integrity, trust. I want to particularly recognize Tessa Harlow, whose analytical insights and strategic thinking have been instrumental in our recent successes. Polite applause rippled through the room. Tessa smiled graciously, accepting congratulations from nearby tables. She looked beautiful under the soft lighting, radiant with professional achievement. She also looked like a woman who'd been carefully positioning herself for this moment for 18 months. Marcus continued his remarks, but I stopped listening. Instead, I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to my foreman, Nate Foster. Monday morning, be ready. Nate responded immediately. About time, boss. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of small talk and strategic positioning. I chatted with the CFO about market trends, complimented the Meridian Group on their recent acquisition, made polite conversation with Elena Ventor about her charity work. Your husband seems to be enjoying himself, I mentioned as Marcus worked the room like a politician. Elena's smile was arctic. Marcus has always been enthusiastic about his work. Dedicated. I admire that in a supervisor. Yes, he's very hands-on with his team. The words carried weight. Elena knew, had probably known for months, maybe longer. As the evening wound down, I helped Tessa into her coat, my fingers brushing the same spot on her back where Marcus's hand had lingered. She didn't lean into my touch. Successful evening, I said as we waited for the valet. Very. Marcus was pleased with the presentation. I'm sure he was. Tell me, what time is your meeting with him on Monday? Tessa paused in adjusting her wrap. How did you know about Monday? Lucky guess. You always meet after significant events like this, debrief sessions, strategic planning. 9:30, Conference Room B. Conference Room B had excellent acoustics. I'd installed the sound system myself 3 years ago when the company upgraded their facilities. The microphones were sensitive enough to pick up whispered conversations from anywhere in the room. They were also connected to a central server that I maintained. Sounds productive, I said as our car arrived. The drive home was quiet. Tessa scrolled through her phone, responding to messages and emails with the efficiency that had made her indispensable to Marcus's operation. I focused on the road, mentally reviewing the timeline I'd constructed over the past 6 months. 18 months ago, first message exchange between Tessa and Marcus. Professional, careful. 16 months ago, late evening texts about project coordination. 14 months ago, hotel reservations under assumed names. 12 months ago, Tessa's promotion to senior analyst. 10 months ago, Jake's consulting company receives its first payment. 8 months ago, Tessa's salary increase. 6 months ago, Marcus approves Tessa's relocation to the corner office. 4 months ago, discussions about removing obstacles to their relationship. 2 months ago, detailed plans for framing me for emotional manipulation if I became problematic. 1 week ago, my SEC complaint filed. Tomorrow, the beginning of the end. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that made everything seem sharper, more defined. I sat in my home office, surrounded by 3 monitors and enough computing power to run a small tech company. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same skills that had built our comfortable life were now documenting its destruction. Tessa had left for her 9:30 meeting an hour ago, coffee travel mug in hand, briefcase perfectly organized. She'd kissed my cheek before leaving, the same ritual we'd maintained for 8 years of marriage. "Don't wait up tonight," she'd said. "Marcus wants to discuss the Henderson project. Might run late." The Henderson project. According to the message threads I'd recovered, that was their code for the Marriott downtown. Room 412. Reserved under the name Jennifer Walsh, paid for with a company credit card allocated to client entertainment expenses. I opened the first monitor to display the SEC portal. Danny's contact information glowed at the top of my screen. The investigation would officially launch this afternoon, but preliminary reviews had already begun. Marcus would receive notification within hours. The second monitor showed the company's internal server. My access credentials were still active. Had been for 3 years, ever since I'd designed their current network infrastructure. Officially, I was an external contractor. Unofficially, I had administrative privileges that most employees didn't know existed. The third monitor displayed the audio feed from conference room B. "The quarterly numbers look strong," Marcus's voice came through clearly. "But we need to discuss the long-term strategy." "I agree. The current situation is becoming complicated." Tessa's voice, professional, controlled, the same tone she used when discussing mortgage refinancing or vacation plans. "Your husband seemed unusually attentive Saturday night. Cole's always been observant. It's part of his nature. Observant enough to be a problem?" A pause. The sound of papers shuffling. "He's been asking questions about my schedule, about you." "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggest he's paying attention." I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled. They were scared. Good. Fear made people careless. Careless people made mistakes. My phone buzzed with a text from Nate. "Ready when you are, boss. The boys are asking questions." Nate Foster had worked construction for 23 years. He'd been my foreman for the past 5, ever since I'd started Harlow Construction as a side business. What began as weekend projects had evolved into a legitimate operation. We specialized in high-end residential work, custom homes for executives and professionals who valued discretion and quality, including Marcus Ventor. 2 years ago, Marcus had hired us to build a deck and outdoor kitchen at his suburban home. Beautiful property, expensive neighborhood, the kind of place where neighbors minded their own business and landscaping services came twice weekly. During that project, I'd noticed things. Elena's separate bedroom, Marcus's home office with its sophisticated lock system, the way he spoke to his wife when he thought no one was listening. I'd also installed more than just outdoor lighting. "Tell the crew to be patient," I texted back. "Everything happens today." The audio feed from conference room B continued. "We need to accelerate our timeline," Marcus was saying. "The Meridian Group is asking questions about departmental efficiency. They want detailed reports on all senior staff. Including me? Including everyone. Elena's been... He paused. Elena's been different lately. Distant. She hired a lawyer last week. Divorce? I think so. She's been documenting everything. Financial records, travel expenses, even my work schedule. Elena Ventor was smarter than her husband realized. While Marcus had been playing corporate games and hotel room rendezvous, his wife had been building a case. The lawyer she'd hired specialized in high-asset divorces involving corporate malfeasance. I'd met him at a charity golf tournament last month. Nice man. Very thorough. What about Cole? Tessa asked. What about him? If Elena's documenting things and Cole's asking questions, you think they're connected? The possibility hadn't occurred to Marcus. He was too arrogant to imagine his wife and his mistress's husband might compare notes, too confident in his ability to control the narrative. I think we need to be careful, Tessa said. Careful how? The way we discussed. The contingency plan. My jaw tightened. The contingency plan involved accusations of emotional manipulation, claims that I'd become controlling and paranoid, suggestions that my behavior was affecting Tessa's work performance and mental health. They'd been laying groundwork for months, subtle comments to friends about my jealousy, casual mentions of my intensity when discussing her career, building a foundation for credible accusations if they needed to discredit me. That's a nuclear option, Marcus said. Better than the alternative. The alternative being? Prison. For both of us. The consulting payments to Jake's company weren't just about moving money. They were about creating a paper trail that implicated Tessa in fraud. If the SEC investigation uncovered the scheme, she'd face federal charges. Marcus, as the approving supervisor, would be equally culpable, unless they could shift blame to an unstable spouse with access to company systems. My phone rang. Danny's number. Cole? We need to talk. Can you meet me downtown? There's been a development. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Danny Chen in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the federal building. He looked exactly like what he was, a government accountant who'd traded his college party habits for spreadsheets and regulatory compliance. Your anonymous tip, he said without preamble. It's solid. We're moving forward with the investigation. How long? Officially, 6 months. Unofficially, we'll have preliminary findings in 2 weeks. The evidence is that clear. Danny opened his laptop, angling the screen so only I could see it. The consulting payments are textbook fraud, shell company, fictitious services, money laundering through family connections. But there's more. He clicked through several documents. Your wife's supervisor has been running similar schemes with 3 other employees, different shell companies, same pattern. We're looking at systematic corruption going back 4 years. Marcus wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was running an organized fraud operation, using romantic relationships to compromise employees and steal from the company. The Meridian Group is going to lose their minds, Danny continued. They've got strict morality clauses in their investment agreements. This kind of scandal could trigger immediate withdrawal of funding. When do you notify the targets? This afternoon. Search warrants are being prepared. We'll freeze accounts, seize records, and conduct interviews starting Wednesday. And the company? Full audit, starting tomorrow. I thanked Danny and walked back to my truck, mind racing. The timeline was accelerating. Marcus and Tessa would learn about the investigation within hours. They'd panic, make desperate decisions. Desperate people did predictable things. My phone buzzed with another text from Nate. Something's happening at the Venter house. Elena's loading suitcases into her car. Elena was moving fast. Probably had advance warning from her lawyer about the SEC investigation. Smart woman. Getting clear of the blast radius before everything exploded. I drove home, parked in the garage, and returned to my office. The audio feed from conference room B was silent. Tessa and Marcus had finished their meeting. But my phone showed 17 missed calls from Tessa. I didn't call back. Instead, I opened the fourth monitor and accessed the security cameras I'd installed at Marcus's house. Elena's BMW was gone from the driveway. Marcus's Lexus sat alone under the portico, looking somehow diminished in the afternoon shadows. My phone rang again. Tessa. "Cole, where are you? I've been trying to reach you." "Home office, working. How was your meeting?" "Fine. Listen, I need to ask you something. Have you done anything unusual lately? Regarding the company?" "Unusual how?" "I don't know. Computer-related. You have access to their systems." "Why would you ask that?" A long pause. "Marcus received some kind of notice this afternoon. From the SEC. There's going to be an investigation." "Investigation of what?" "I don't know. He won't tell me. But he's scared, Cole. Really scared." "I'm sure it's just routine. These things happen in business." "This isn't routine. They're freezing accounts, seizing records. Marcus thinks someone reported him." "Reported him for what?" Another pause, longer this time. "I can't discuss this over the phone. I'm coming home." "I'll be here." But I wouldn't be. Not when she arrived. I had one more stop to make before the evening's entertainment began. The Marriott downtown, room 412, where Jennifer Walsh had a standing reservation every Monday evening, where Marcus Ventor was about to have the worst day of his professional life. The Marriott's parking garage smelled like concrete and desperation. I sat in my truck on level 3, watching the elevator bank through tinted windows. Marcus's Lexus had arrived 20 minutes ago. He'd parked in his usual spot, section C, close to the stairwell for quick exits. Old habits. My phone showed the time as 6:47 p.m. Tessa would be home soon, finding an empty house and a note explaining that I'd gone to check on a job site. She'd call. I wouldn't answer. The uncertainty would eat at her, the same way it had eaten at me for 18 months. The elevator dinged. Marcus emerged, looking like a man walking to his own execution. His usually perfect hair was disheveled. His tie hung loose. The confidence that had carried him through Saturday's gala had evaporated, replaced by the hunted expression of someone who'd just learned the walls were closing in. He walked quickly toward the hotel entrance, head down, avoiding eye contact with other guests. The SEC notice had arrived at 3:15 p.m., according to my source. Search warrants would be executed Wednesday morning. Account freezes were already in effect. Marcus's world was collapsing in real time. I waited 5 more minutes, then followed him inside. The Marriott's lobby buzzed with typical Monday evening activity. Business travelers checking in, couples meeting for dinner, a wedding party posing for photos near the fountain. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that a different kind of drama was unfolding 4 floors above their heads. I took the stairs. Room 412 sat at the end of a quiet hallway, away from the elevators and ice machines. Perfect for privacy. I'd reserved the room across the hall earlier that morning, using a credit card linked to one of my construction accounts. The desk clerk hadn't asked questions. The hallway was empty. I pressed my ear to the door of 412. Voices, muffled but audible. "Can't stay here. The investigation. Need to think. Figure out our options." "What options?" "They have everything, Marcus. Bank records, email trails, your approval signatures." Tessa's voice sharp with panic. I pulled out my phone and activated the recording app. Whatever happened next, I wanted documentation. "We stick to the plan," Marcus said. "Your husband's been acting strange, asking questions, making threats." "What threats?" "Saturday night, at the gala, he cornered me, said things." "What things?" "He knew about us, about Elena, about the investors. He's been watching." "That doesn't prove anything." "It proves he's unstable, paranoid, the kind of person who might file false reports to get revenge on his wife's supervisor. The contingency plan. Frame me as a jealous husband who'd fabricated evidence to destroy his wife's career. It might have worked if they'd implemented it 6 months ago, before I'd documented everything, before Elena had started building her own case, before the SEC had developed independent evidence of systematic fraud. Now, it was just desperation. "Cole's not stupid," Tessa said. "He won't just accept accusations. He won't have a choice. By the time we're finished, his credibility will be destroyed. Unstable spouse makes wild allegations. Loving wife forced to seek protection. Concerned supervisor tries to help. And the money? What money? The consulting payments, Marcus. They can trace everything back to Jake's company. Jake doesn't know anything. He signed papers, deposited checks. If anyone asks, he thought it was legitimate consulting work. Jake, Tessa's younger brother, 26 years old, 2 years of community college, currently employed as a part-time bartender at a sports bar in the suburbs. The idea that he'd been hired as a business consultant was laughable, unless you needed a fall guy. "This is insane," Tessa said. "We should just come clean, admit the relationship, return the money, accept the consequences. The consequences are federal prison. Better than what you're suggesting. What I'm suggesting is survival." I heard movement inside the room. Footsteps, the sound of a suitcase being zipped. "Where are you going?" Tessa asked. "Home, to Elena, to play the concerned husband whose wife is having a breakdown." "What about me?" "You go home to Cole, act normal, let me handle the rest." "Handle it how?" "Trust me." The door opened. I stepped back into the alcove near the ice machine, phone still recording. Marcus emerged first, straightening his tie, composing his features into something resembling normalcy. He walked toward the elevator without looking back. Tessa followed 30 seconds later. She looked smaller somehow, fragile. The confident executive from Saturday's Gala had been replaced by a woman who just realized she was drowning. I waited until both elevators had descended, then walked to room 412. The door was slightly ajar. Hotel security would find it that way during their evening rounds. They'd check the registration. Jennifer Walsh. Credit card declined due to account freeze. No contact information on file. Another loose thread for investigators to follow. I returned to the parking garage and settled in to wait. The next phase required patience. My phone buzzed with a text from Nate. "Package delivered. Ms. Zimmer says thanks for the tip." Ms. Zimmer. Our 73-year-old neighbor who'd lived on Maple Street for 42 years. She knew everyone's business, remembered everything, and had strong opinions about marriage, fidelity, and proper behavior. She also had a clear view of our driveway from her kitchen window. The package Nate had delivered contained printed copies of selected text messages between Tessa and Marcus. Nothing explicit. Nothing that violated privacy laws. Just enough to establish a pattern of inappropriate communication between a supervisor and his employee. Ms. Zimmer would study those messages carefully. She'd compare them to her own observations about Tessa's schedule, her late nights, her unexplained absences. She'd reach conclusions. More importantly, she'd share those conclusions with her bridge club, her church group, and anyone else who'd listen. Small-town gossip was a powerful weapon when properly deployed. At 8:23 p.m., Tessa's Honda pulled into our driveway. She sat in the car for several minutes before going inside. Through her phone's GPS tracking, I could monitor her location in real time. She went straight to the kitchen, then to my office, then to our bedroom, looking for me, finding evidence of my absence. At 8:31 she called. I let it go to voicemail. At 8:35 she texted, "Where are you? We need to talk." At 8:42 she called again. At 8:47 she sent another text. "This is serious, Cole. Please call me." Fear was setting in. The same fear I'd lived with for months, wondering why my wife was pulling away, why her schedule had become so unpredictable, why she'd changed her phone password 3 times in 6 months. Now she could experience that uncertainty firsthand. At 9:15, Marcus's Lexus pulled into his driveway. I watched through the security cameras as he approached his front door, key in hand, preparing to play the role of concerned husband returning from a long day at the office. The door opened before he reached it. Elena stood in the doorway, still wearing the pearls from Saturday night. Behind her, I could see suitcases stacked in the foyer. The conversation was brief. Elena's lawyer had prepared her well. She handed Marcus an envelope, spoke for less than 30 seconds, then closed the door. Marcus stood on his own front porch, holding divorce papers, locked out of the house he'd paid for. He walked back to his car, shoulders slumped in defeat. My phone rang. Tessa again. This time, I answered. Cole? Thank goodness, where have you been? Driving, thinking, trying to process some things. What things? Saturday night, your meeting with Marcus today. The SEC investigation. A sharp intake of breath. How do you know about the investigation? Word travels fast in business circles, especially when it involves fraud allegations. It's not what you think. What do I think, Tessa? I don't know, but whatever you're imagining, you're wrong. Am I? Then explain it to me. Explain why the SEC is investigating your supervisor. Explain why you've been meeting him at the Marriott every Monday for the past 8 months. Explain why your brother's consulting company received $340,000 for services he's not qualified to provide. Silence. Cole. Explain why you've been planning to frame me for emotional manipulation if your scheme was discovered. Explain why you thought I was stupid enough not to notice. More silence. I'm coming home, she finally said. No, you're not. What do you mean? I mean the locks have been changed. I mean your belongings are packed and sitting on the front porch. I mean our marriage is over. You can't do this. I just did. Cole, please. Let me explain. 18 months, Tessa. You've had 18 months to explain. The time for explanations is over. I ended the call and turned off the phone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the SEC interviews, media attention, legal proceedings. But tonight, for the first time in 18 months, I felt something approaching peace. Justice wasn't always swift, but when it finally arrived, it was thorough. Wednesday morning brought autumn rain and federal agents. I watched from my office window as 3 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot of Venter Industries. The SEC investigation was moving into its active phase. My phone had been silent since Monday night. Tessa's belongings had disappeared from the front porch Tuesday morning, along with her car from the driveway. Ms. Zimmer reported seeing a moving truck around noon, followed by several heated phone conversations in her backyard. The neighborhood was talking. Cole? Nate's voice carried from the kitchen. You've got visitors. I walked downstairs to find Elena Ventor standing in my living room, immaculate as always, despite the circumstances. She wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and her expression carried the cold satisfaction of a woman whose patience had finally been rewarded. Mrs. Ventor, this is unexpected. Elena, please, I think we're past formalities. She gestured toward the window, where the federal vehicles were visible in the distance. Quite a morning. I imagine so. Coffee? Thank you. We settled in the kitchen, the domestic normalcy of the moment contrasting sharply with the drama unfolding across town. Elena accepted her cup with steady hands. Marcus was arrested an hour ago, she said without preamble. At his office, in front of his entire staff. I'm sorry. No, you're not. Neither am I. She sipped her coffee, studying me over the rim. The FBI found some interesting things in his computer files, detailed records of his various schemes. Your wife features prominently. Former wife. Yes, I heard about Monday night. Efficient work. Elena reached into her purse and withdrew a manila folder. I thought you might find these interesting. The folder contained photographs. Marcus and Tessa entering the Marriott. Marcus and a blonde woman I didn't recognize at a restaurant downtown. Marcus and a brunette in the parking lot of another hotel. 3 other employees, Elena explained. All part of his consulting fraud. All romantically involved with him at various times over the past 4 years. You've been documenting this for a while. 2 years, since I found the first hotel receipt in his jacket pocket. Her smile was arctic. I'm a very patient woman, Cole, but patience has its limits. What happens now? Now, Marcus faces federal charges for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The other women face similar charges. The company faces massive fines and potential bankruptcy. The Meridian Group has already withdrawn their investment. And Tessa? Elena's expression softened slightly. Your wife was the most recent addition to his scheme. Her involvement is extensive, but not as deep as the others. With proper legal representation and cooperation with investigators, she might avoid prison. Might. The federal system isn't known for its mercy, especially in cases involving systematic fraud. I processed this information, feeling a complex mix of satisfaction and regret. Justice, but at a cost that extended far beyond the guilty parties. There's something else, Elena continued. Something you should know before it becomes public. She opened the folder again, revealing a different set of documents. Marcus has been embezzling from the company for 6 years. The consulting schemes were just one part of it. He's stolen approximately $2.3 million through various methods. $2.3 million. The investigation will uncover everything. Fake vendor accounts, inflated project costs, kickbacks from suppliers. Your wife's involvement represents less than 20% of the total fraud. The scope was staggering. Marcus hadn't just been cheating on his wife and stealing from his company. He'd been running a comprehensive criminal enterprise, using his position and charm to manipulate multiple victims. Why are you telling me this? Elena stood, smoothing her skirt with practiced elegance. Because you deserve to know the truth. Because you helped expose something that needed exposing. And because... She paused, considering her words. Because we've both been victims of the same man's arrogance. After Elena left, I sat alone in my kitchen, processing the magnitude of what had been revealed. The rain continued to fall, washing the autumn leaves from the maple trees that lined our street. Our street. I'd have to stop thinking of it that way. My phone buzzed with a text from Danny. Need to talk. Can you come downtown? The federal building was a hive of activity. News vans lined the street. Reporters interviewed anyone willing to discuss Ventor Industries and the ongoing investigation. I slipped through the crowd and took the elevator to Danny's floor. Hell of a thing, he said, closing his office door behind me. Your anonymous tip opened up the biggest corporate fraud case we've seen in 5 years. Elena said Marcus has been stealing for 6 years. At least, maybe longer. We're still unraveling everything. Danny gestured toward a wall covered with charts, photographs, and financial documents. He was sophisticated. Multiple shell companies, fake identities, offshore accounts. If he'd been content with just stealing money, he might have gotten away with it. But he wasn't content. No, he got greedy, started using romantic relationships to expand his schemes. That created witnesses, people who could testify about his methods. Like Tessa. Like all of them. 4 women, Cole. 4 separate schemes running simultaneously. He was juggling relationships, managing multiple frauds, and somehow maintaining his public image as a family man and successful executive. Until it all collapsed. Spectacular collapse. The company's stock price has dropped 60% since Monday. The Meridian Group is demanding full restitution. Marcus's assets are frozen. His house is being seized. I thought about Elena's suitcases, her careful preparation for this moment. What about the women? Depends on their level of cooperation. The first 2 are already talking, providing detailed testimony about Marcus's methods and their own involvement. The third hired a lawyer and isn't saying anything yet. And Tessa? Danny consulted his notes. Scheduled for questioning tomorrow morning. Her lawyer contacted us yesterday. They're interested in a cooperation agreement. What would that involve? Full disclosure of her involvement. Testimony against Marcus. Restitution of the money she received. Possible plea agreement for reduced charges. Prison? Maybe. Probably probation and community service if she cooperates fully. The federal guidelines are complex, but first-time offenders who assist in prosecution often receive lighter sentences. I left the federal building feeling emotionally drained. The investigation was proceeding exactly as planned, but the human cost was becoming clear. Tessa faced potential federal charges. Marcus would likely spend years in prison. The company would probably collapse, eliminating hundreds of jobs. Justice was messy. That evening, I sat on my back deck with a beer, watching the sun set through the bare branches of the oak trees. The neighborhood was quiet, except for the distant sound of traffic and the occasional dog bark. My phone rang. Tessa's number. I hesitated, then answered. Cole? I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to say something. Her voice sounded different, smaller. The confidence and authority had been stripped away, leaving something raw and vulnerable. I'm listening. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, and I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to hear it. Why, Tessa? Why did you do it? A long pause. I don't know. At first, it was just the attention. Marcus made me feel important, valued, like I was special. You were special to me. I know. I threw that away for something that felt exciting and dangerous and new. And the money? That came later. Marcus said it was just creative accounting, moving funds around to maximize tax benefits. I knew it was wrong, but I convinced myself it wasn't really stealing. It was stealing. Yes, it was. Another pause. I've lost everything, Cole. My job, my marriage, my reputation. I might go to prison. You made choices. I did, and I have to live with the consequences. Her voice cracked slightly. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, for all of it. The call ended. I sat in the growing darkness, feeling a complex mix of emotions I couldn't fully process. Tomorrow would bring new developments, more revelations, additional consequences. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, I felt like I could finally breathe. 3 months later, I stood in the courthouse parking lot, watching Tessa emerge from the federal building in handcuffs. The plea agreement had fallen through. Her cooperation hadn't been sufficient to avoid prosecution. 18 months in federal prison, 3 years supervised probation, full restitution of the stolen funds. Marcus had received 8 years. The morning newspaper lay folded on my truck's dashboard, its headline reading, Ventor Industries fraud ring sentenced. Below that, a smaller story about the company's bankruptcy filing and the loss of 400 jobs. Elena Ventor had moved to California, taking her divorce settlement and starting fresh. She'd sent me a Christmas card with a simple message. Thank you for your courage. Nate walked up beside me, coffee in hand, watching as the news crews documented Tessa's departure. You okay, boss? Yeah, I think so. She made her choices. She did. We stood in comfortable silence, 2 men who'd seen justice served and found it more complicated than expected. What's next? Nate asked. Back to work. We've got the Morrison project starting Monday. Good. The crew's been getting restless. I climbed into my truck and drove home through streets I was still learning to navigate alone. The house felt different now, quieter, simpler. I'd removed most of the furniture, keeping only what I needed. Ms. Zimmer waved from her kitchen window as I pulled into the driveway. She'd become something of a local celebrity, the neighborhood's expert on the scandal that had dominated regional news for months. Inside, I poured a glass of bourbon and sat in my office, looking at the monitors that had once displayed evidence of betrayal. Now they showed construction schedules, project timelines, and business correspondence. My phone buzzed with a text from Danny. Drinks tonight? Sarah wants to introduce you to her sister. I smiled, typing back, rain check, but thanks. There would be time for new relationships eventually, time for trust to rebuild, time for the sharp edges of this experience to smooth into something manageable. But not yet. I raised my glass toward the window, where the last light of winter was fading into darkness. To choices, I said aloud. And consequences. The bourbon was smooth. The house was quiet. The future was uncertain. For the first time in 3 years, that felt exactly right. Outside, snow began to fall, covering the street in fresh white silence. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new possibilities, new chances to build something better from the wreckage of what had come before. But tonight was for reflection, for closure, for the simple satisfaction of a man who'd faced betrayal and responded with patience, intelligence, and an unwavering commitment to truth. The last hand had been played. The cards were on the table. The game was finally over. And I had won.